I'd like to call this meeting of Jamestown City Council work session to order for March 10th. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Here.
Brackman.
Here.
Catamiti.
Here.
Reynolds.
Present.
Faulkner.
Here.
Bonfiglio. DeVersa.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
President Bowles.
Here. Thank you. At this time, we'll give opportunities for people to address the council. Please give your name and address and limit your remarks to 5 minutes. We have a busy agenda. We have a presentation, so we will adhere to the 5 minutes strictly. Anybody would like to address the council?
Doug Champ, 55 Golden Street, Jamestown. In front of you tonight is going to be a proposed resolution asking that you reallocate money from the platform known as HOME, or the Community Development Block Grant Consolidation Plan, and for $640,000 to go to the Gateway Project. I wanted to come here not as adversarial to anyone, although I get passionate about things that I talk about. So I apologize earlier, I may have raised my voice too loud. But nevertheless, it's important that you understand that when you make substantial amendments, changes, there's certain things that have to be accomplished in order to do that. And I wanted to be sure, because I didn't see that in any kind of communication. Maybe that'll be talked about later. But regarding it, it's important to understand that when you have an amendment, there's certain specific requirements that have to be maintained and done. And a substantial amendment is exactly what is in front of you tonight. The consolidated plan amendments criteria, the citizen participation plan must specify the criteria jurisdiction will use for determining what changes in the jurisdiction plan or actual activities constitute a substantial amendment to the consolidated plan. The citizen participation plan must include among the criteria for substantial amendment changes in the use of block grant funds for one eligible activity to another. The criteria have to be measured and have to have citizen participation. This includes public hearings, substantial amount of time between the public hearings, notification in the paper, etc., etc. You can't ignore that. That has to be part of the overall process of this substantial change. Now, I'm against it up front. When we have so many needs in our community for individual homeowners that we want to award $640,000 to an estimated $77 million project, and if you divide 110 units into that, that's $700,000 a unit. $700,000. All the need factors are all in play. In addition to that, what's happening on a federal level regarding the changes in the block grant program and then also the home program, and even the potential of removing the HUD field office out of Buffalo and going to a regional office out of New York. All these things are working against us regarding allocating money that could be used in other ways. As an example, $640,000 could be used for a variety of things. It certainly wasn't documented in the overall plan. And in order to change that plan, in terms of using a variation of those monies, you have to follow the amendment process. Now, I trust that will be followed with public involvement, public connections, talk about how well that money is going to be used, and what that money is exactly going to be used for, not put in a pot. So tonight, this resolution is critical because you may not have a home or block grant program in a year or two at all. There may be a problem. What you're going to do with what you already have is that you're taking a good share of that money, $640,000, and you're giving it to basically a project that may not even happen. So who's going to hold on to the money? Still, the state, the financial investors. And the way they fund these projects basically is through a bonding arrangement where they have equity investors that buy these things and depreciate the value accordingly as to what the project is. So they might be from Texas, they might be from Denmark, it could be anywhere. So the problem we got is, do you want something like this? And by the way, according to the site plan that was presented, the income eligibility for one individual is making only $27,000 a year. And every one of those units are available for renting or using from anybody in the state of New York that qualifies. So 110 units may turn into 250 people. Are you ready for that? Police, fire, mental health, medical coverage, all of that. And then I heard the numbers there at the site plan. They got 150 cars. I don't know where they're coming from, but that's what they're planning for parking spaces. And the site plan, and by the way, I'm old enough to be actually one that can say I've been in Chautauqua Hardware when it's a hardware company, making chemical-induced products. That whole building is a sick building. Everything is embedded in the flooring, embedded in the beams, embedded in the walls, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, John. All right. Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council? Seeing none. Crystal, did you want to say anything?
No, I think it's more appropriate that when Stella is here for the public hearing, that they have the opportunity to present
And
their.
there was a 30-day window is open
Yep.
right now. And
Correct.
the hearing will be
Public hearing
on
is open.
March 31st prior to our voting session.
And as far as significant amendment goes, this is not the first time we've done a significant amendment. We know the process, it is underway, it will be followed. And we have talked with our HUD representatives, as I mentioned earlier, in detail about this project and what the funding will be used for. And we have clarified with them that this is absolutely something that we can do with those funds.
In the event the project didn't go through, the money.
What we're proposing is that this project will help get site prep, I guess, if you will, underway. So, without going into a lot of detail, because there's a whole lot of site remediation that needs to happen. This is a brownfield cleanup project. The work could get started with some of that remediation. We also know that we have another project that the city is doing, the Middlebrook project. This will tie in with that to make sure that things are coordinated site-wise, so we're not doing one thing and then we have to come back and do another thing. That will all be coordinated as part of the entire project.
Thank you. All right, we do have a presentation tonight for the Drescher and Malecki gentlemen are here to give a full audit findings from the work session. They came to the finance committee. Unfortunately, they didn't have a whole lot of time, and they did a great job of a condensed version. The floor is yours.
All right.
Introduce yourself and your.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Carl Widmer from Drescher Malecki, partner at the firm. With me tonight is Jared Picard, senior manager on the job. So we are here tonight. We were here just about a year ago presenting on the previous audit that was performed. Tonight we're going to report on the results of our audit of the city's fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023. So right there, I'll make the statement, qualifying statement. Of course, this is later than you typically see an annual audit turnaround. So we've been working with the city. The audit of 2022 was significantly delayed. This one was anticipated to go quicker. I think there was a little bit more going on that needed to be worked on at the city than initially had hoped for, so they weren't ready for us to come in until just this past December. So turning around the audit in about a year, so hopefully this next audit of fiscal year 2024 can start chipping away at catching up on the timeline. We did have the opportunity to meet with the Finance Committee before this meeting and go over these items in greater detail. So I'll give an expedited version, but please, if there's something that catches anyone's attention, feel free to raise your hand or interrupt me, and we can go over what your concern might be. So the first slide, it's coming, is essentially a list of our audit deliverables, what you can expect out of each year's audit. No? Not much? I swear we're gonna provide something. Anyhow, I can go over it, that's fine.
Okay.
So there is, of course, the basic financial statements. That's the primary deliverable that comes out of the audit process. In addition to the financial statements is a single audit. That's a special compliance audit that we perform for the city. That's related to the amount of federal awards that the city receives and then spends through programs. The largest one, of course, is going to be all of the ARPA money. So for fiscal year 2023, the city, there it is.
Oh.
Yeah, go back, thank you. Is the ARPA program. So you spent just shy of $10 million during 2023 using ARPA money. Because of that, that program was selected for compliance testing by our audit firm. So we take the audit guidance straight from the federal government and we follow that and perform the audit as they suggest. The third item is a New York State Department of Transportation, similar to a federal compliance audit. Because the city receives over $1 million of New York State DOT money and spends it, you're subject to a special state compliance audit that we also perform. The last two items are required communications. Auditor communications, we go over what the roles and the responsibilities are on either side of this agreement. I think one thing that I'll point out to keep in close perspective here is the financial statements, the single audit, these are all the city's documents. They're the city's numbers that are maintained by city staff throughout the year. It's your property. While we help compile that document, it's not the auditor's financial statements. They're the city's financial statements. We're hired to perform an audit over the amounts and the note disclosures that are in that document. So the only pages that we take ownership for are those that are on our letterhead, and that's called our professional opinion. So we perform our process, we assess risk, we review the dollar amounts, we look at the internal controls, how things are done in the different departments, to culminate with our professional opinion. And why that's important is the users of your financial statements, yourselves, resident taxpayers, the bond market, granting agencies, they want to be able to pick up that financial statement package and feel that they can rely on those numbers as being accurate, as being fairly stated. That's the terminology that we use. So Drescher Malecki's professional opinion gives that assurance. Because they rely on our firm for that assurance, it's imperative that we're independent from the city. We don't want any conflicts of interest, any bias to accompany our audit of the city. We want to come from a completely objective point of view and be able to run through our audit without any influence from city staff, board, whoever. We can confirm all of our relationships, no conflicts of interest, so we are in the right place to serve as the city's auditors. Go to the next one, please. So as far as the finances go, this is December 31st, 2023. So we'll move through it. This is what's in the report, but of course you're now 15 months beyond this. General fund, this graph includes 5 years of the revenues, money coming in, versus the expenditures, money going out. Your general fund is performing the lion's share of the activity of the city. So for 2023, spending rose to $50 million. Revenues came in to just shy of $50 million. The net difference there was $923,000. So what that means is the fund balance of the general fund decreased by $923,000 as a result of the operations of fiscal year 2023. The increase in activity, you see 2019, 20, 21, relatively consistent, and then come along 2022 and 23, you see the spike in activity. That's the influx of the ARPA funding. So you're able to recognize it as a revenue, money coming in, and that afforded the city new opportunities to spend that money on various purposes. But that's what really inflated the spending and the revenue numbers outside of your typical budgeted annual operations. Next one, please. This graph is going to present 5 years of the fund balance. This is the equity position where did you end up at the end of the year? So at December 31st, 2023, fund balance went from 9.2 million down to 8.3. So $8.3 million is the total fund balance in the general fund. And in the financial statements, it gets broken down into different categories based on how available, how liquid, are there any restrictions on being able to spend that money. And the largest portion on the bottom there, the blue portion, 7.1 million is called unassigned. By the name, it's available for whatever the city's general fund may need it for. A benchmark here to measure, people often ask, well, is that a lot? Is that enough? As an auditor, we can't provide that opinion. You know, that's more of a consultant position. But what we can offer is perspective. And using best practices, there's an agency called the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, it's a national group. They've offered previously that a government's general fund should be no less than 2 months of operations. So if you were to take the year's spending, divide it into 12 equal months, multiply that by 2, so they're saying 16.7% of a year's spending you should have sitting in your unassigned fund balance. And then after that, if you have additional risk factors that you'd want to increase that amount, there's sort of a benchmark that you could use to compare yourselves. So previously, you did reach that level for 2021 and 2022. 2023, that decrease in your unassigned fund balance got you to, on the next slide please, we take that and perform that calculation. Now, it's difficult to see here, but it's 0.14, it's 14%. Previously it was 17%. So you're right on that limbo there. Something to consider is you're looking at spending with this ARPA money inflated. So if you were to take that fund balance number and compare it to strictly annual operating, that percentage would go up. So take with that what you will. And then the final slide, I think, yeah, just observations. So here, to communicate, briefly what we got to talk to the committee about before is the financials, they are what they are. It's certainly historical. We do a look back. We don't forecast. We're auditors. So what happened has happened. Those are the results. We take a look at how can the city improve? How can we make this turnaround quicker for the next year's audit? And there are similar communications to our audit of 2022. So if you were here last year at the presentation, we cited a couple areas that we had findings in the report for. One of them being an increased risk surrounding all accounting cycles because of a lack of segregation of duties. And what that means is you need some checks and balances, additional staff to be involved in critical cycles so that one person can perform, another independent person could review and approve that process. So when you have one person performing a large amount of work, therein lies an opportunity for risk, right? So we didn't notice, nothing came to our attention or is indicative of fraud. We don't perform an audit looking for fraud. That would be a forensic auditor. But we are certainly mindful of it during the performance of our audit. Nothing came to our attention, but it's our job to communicate to the group where a risk may lie, and that's a risk. Another finding is directly related to just the timing, that a December 31st, 2023 financial statement should be submitted to the federal government to comply by September 30th of the following year, a 9-month turnaround. So of course, the city is behind on that. We work closely with management and the group to try to see what improvements can be made. There's a lot of projects going on. Accounting software is changing down there. There's union contracts that need to be negotiated. So things that become a higher priority around the office have certainly made speeding up the audit process more of a challenge than anticipated. But that is the short and quick of it. If anybody had any additional questions, feel free to ask. This is also our contact information if you felt more comfortable reaching out directly. Sure.
Carl, is your agency or your company engaged to do 2024 for the city?
Yes,
Have
we
we
are.
made that step?
Yes, we are.
Gauge your company. And when would you project a summary of 2024?
Can't even say. I mean, if you were to
September,
ask
fall?
me last year, I would have anticipated different results than this too. I think the goal is, we're gonna have, we talked about this, regular communication over the next few months to see what sort of progress is being made with records. We can't perform our audit until the city's records are in a certain condition.
Okay.
So we'll be in touch to see how those are progressing. We want to keep improving. To have it done by September 30th this year, I don't think that's happening. We're sort of beyond that. It's more of a, how much of a chunk can we improve to make fiscal year 25 potentially that big?
Because I think it will impact how we handle budget negotiations coming up in the fall.
Yeah.
And what the results for what your audit will show for 2024.
Correct. And this information, I'll remind you, it is the city's information. So it's coming straight from the accounting system. We audit it, but that information's in the system and is available for updates, more real time. Anything else?
I just had a question for the comptroller, really. The spendable money in the fund balance is stated as $7.1 million.
That was
Yeah.
a while back.
Out of that 7.1 million that we were just given, obviously dating back, what is that number, that critical number that we shouldn't go below based on recommendations from the state or?
For 25?
Sure, I mean, if you have the most accurate numbers, I know we're playing catch up, but if you know off the top of your head or have it right there.
So Carl, is 16% kind of the median of that, or does it depend on the size of the budget, or it depends on the spending?
There's a lot of factors because it also is the style of governance by the governing board, because outside of that unassigned fund balance, you have restricted fund balances. So if you have reserves that are plentiful, that affords you to run a lower unassigned fund balance. So it is, it depends on the individual entity.
7.2, a little over 7.2 on the 25 budget,
Okay.
of 43,378.
Okay, so you're saying that our fund balance should not go below 7.2 for 2025?
Based on the budget, yes.
Because I know some individuals or groups, they hear that number and they don't understand why, maybe they run their own households down to zero at the end of every month, but we can't do that as a municipality.
No.
So.
Any
Thank
other
you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our committee reports. Joey, what do you got for housing?
Oh, how's it?
You're welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night.
Okay, housing, started at 6:30, ended at 7. We did have a couple of folks come to town, or come to the meeting to comment on housing. We had 3 women from, that were friends, one of them from 103 Cross Street, who saw the picture in the Post-Journal showing the end of Cross Street near 2nd Street, and of course she had most of her comments related to the other end, the dead end going towards the railroad tracks. And she's in essence complaining and asking questions about why the demolitions haven't happened in the last almost 3 years. There's 3, maybe 4 properties, she said, that qualify. She misconstrued tiny houses maybe being campers and travel trailers, and that camper had been removed 4 or 5 years ago, I guess, and we helped her understand that the tiny house concept wasn't trailers. Police calls are continuing, she said, and she questioned the rehabilitation initiative and how that was all gonna come together. Crystal spent quite a bit of time and responded and explained about the infill project, the demo activity, and how that progresses. So they will hopefully visit the DOD if there's more questions or more concerns, but as of right now, they were, I think, pacified to the fact that we don't have the resources to do all these demos that are necessary in the city. Had another woman, Lynette Elazer from Cityview, actually gave a compliment to the issues of housing in the city and how difficult it really is, and she commended the committee and Crystal's office for all the good work and the difficult work that is at hand. Lastly, we had Doug Champ speak about the Gateway project. Apparently that's gaining some traction in the news and through planning and zoning departments in the city. And I think we pretty much left it at there was a lot to discuss and hopefully have a public comment opportunity on the totality of that project. And I just heard Crystal mention that Stell, the folks putting the project together, will maybe in the near future speak to the council about the actual program itself and the project. So that was housing.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Move on to finance, Brent.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 5 resolutions. The first is reallocating $269,685.00 in ARPA funds from the first-time homebuyers rebate assistance category to the strategic acquisition category of this existing contract with the Chicago Land Bank. Apparently, they did try to market that. First-time homebuyers program didn't have much success with that, and this is a better program that's coming on. So that was approved. Next is reallocating home investment money in fiscal years 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Total amount of $640,000 to authorize and directed to submit the significant amendment to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We heard this is going to be related to the Gateway project. We're told by the Director of Development that part of the plan of the Gateway project is to pay $85,000 pilot payment to the city of Jamestown, as opposed to having this being totally not-for-profit and untaxed. And there also is a clause in there where Stowe will be providing the city with $355,000 for citywide demolition projects. So that is still in play there. That was passed by our committee. Next is a result that the city of Jamestown, in order to take positive steps to alleviate the housing crisis, adopts the pro-housing communities pledge. This is something that we voted on last year, but this is reaffirming it for this year. It goes hand in hand with the Gateways project. That was approved. Resolutions resolved that Detective Damon be and hereby is authorized to attend the Advanced Forensic Techniques and Crime Scene Investigations 1 training to be held in Glencoe, Georgia from April 6th through April 19th, 2025, with transportation, lodging, and meal expenses paid by the Stockholm District Attorney's DCJS Give Grant. That was approved. And finally, we have a resolution that the Jamestown Police Department be and hereby is authorized to purchase Exxon Investigate for a term of 36 months. We previously approved Give Grant funds of $19,483.92. This is to help review video, the ICAMs especially, to be aiding the district attorney's office in prosecuting criminals. That was approved. And finally, we did get the 2020 audit findings or presentation from Director Malaki as well. That just all we have for finance.
Any questions?
I had a question, a few questions. The $85,000 pilot payment is a result of that project. Are they locked into that? I mean, as far as, what if they become a non-for-profit and that pilot payment goes away? Is that
They
a
are not-for-profit, they are paying that in,
Similar to like what Lutheran pays
Yep.
or some of the
Paying
codes.
there's not an obligation to pay taxes right now.
right?
And so that will actually generate, a payment in lieu of taxes for that property,
For how
where-
long?
in perpetuity.
Is there any way out of that payment? I mean,
For them,
sure.
not without approval by council.
So there's no way that could stop, there's no legal ramblings that could stop that would continue?
I'm not an attorney, so I don't feel like I can answer that, but,
Elliot?
Yeah, so the pilot is for a term of 15 years. So
Okay.
obviously, once the 15 years are over, the pilot will be up for renegotiation.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that, Jeff?
Sure.
How'd that number get derived? The amount for the pilot?
That would be a great question to ask Stell when they're here, I think. I can go back through my records and see unless you remember, Elliot. It's been a while since I've,
So, yeah, many years ago, i.e.
Yeah.
2020, we met, the late assessor, Lisa Volpe, myself and Stell, and it was assessed around the $85,000 mark. That then went up. It was also, brought into play with the mitigation funding in agreement with Stell. But obviously, I said late assessor, so we can revisit that with our current assessor.
The other question I had was, there's $355,000 designated for demo projects of, is it still gonna be the way it was back pre-pandemic where we're gonna pick a 3-bedroom house, that's gonna be demoed for, do you recall what the dollar amount was? That
the
was gonna be
total
allocated?
structure of the mitigation plan.
Yes,
I don't recall exactly how we had that laid out, but, I can send that to everyone.
okay, I don't remember that, I thought the dollar amount back then was larger than 355,000. I might not be accurate on that, but that comes out roughly to be 10 houses in the city would have to be torn down there.
Yeah, I think at the time, and I did mention in the finance committee, I said I think it's around 350,000, but I could be mistaken on that number. That we had estimated it to be about 20 to 22 demolitions. So obviously, using today's demolition costs, that's changed a bit. So I will get the clarification on that for everyone, and I will send you all a copy of that mitigation plan. And that details out number of units. I know that we kind of spelled it out by number of units as well, so.
Not to put you on the spot, but let's say this doesn't pass council, and this money is not designated to that project. What else can this $600,000 be used for? Are there other projects that?
In a short period of time, I can't say. We don't have something that is in the hopper that is ready to go. Home funding, we typically utilize for home rehabilitation projects. We have several of those underway right now.
So could it be used for blight in neighborhoods?
In what way? It has to specifically meet home requirements. We can't do demolitions with it.
What about low income, say seniors, veterans that can't afford to, upkeep on their homes that meet the financial parameters.
We already have the home program underway. And we do currently have, it's a 60+ Restore New York grant funding that is open right now, for emergency funding.
But
So,
those additional funds could be allocated for more of those projects,
we could,
correct?
but we would have to create a program,
Sure.
and we would have to have the capacity to administer that program.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I can tell you, we do not with the number of projects that we have open and that we're trying to administer. To spend that funding down, Mr. Champ was right, there is a sense of urgency, because we don't know what is going to happen over the course of the next couple of months with HUD funding. We don't know if we will continue to be an entitlement community and receive an annual allocation of HUD funding. While yes, this idea came up as a way to spend that funding down quickly, it's also something that we believe is a very good project and that we are very much advocating to utilize it for. It's 110 units that we, as we all know, we have a significant need for supportive housing services for, and again, it's more appropriate for Stell and Community Helping Hands to present this project, and to answer questions at the public hearing, but there is a combination of supportive housing units which will be operated and run by Stell with 24-hour on-site staffing. A portion of the project will be designated for youth transitional housing, so youth aging out of foster care. So we're talking 18 to 24-year-olds learning how to, they can no longer receive foster care, right? They're still kids, learning how to live on their own, so that there's a supportive component to that. And then the rest of it is made up of low to moderate income apartments, a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So we're not talking just individuals, we are talking families with children. And we have a homelessness problem, we have a substance abuse problem, we have a mental health problem, all of the same things that are happening in other communities like ours. This project is geared toward addressing so many of those problems, and the impact that $640,000 could have to help get that project started can catalyze the rest of the funding and catalyze the project. So we're not talking about someday we're gonna do this, we're doing it. The site work needs to happen no matter what, and that's what this funding would start to address. We also, I mentioned the Minnowbrook project, so it would happen in coordination with that. So, right, end of the day, if for some reason this project doesn't go forward, we're still doing site work and remediation and working in tandem with our own city and our own staff on a project that we are already doing. This is not funding that is not going to be utilized in a positive way.
Here's my only concern, and I think I said this one time before, a couple years ago, when we were talking about the women's homeless shelter that was, that is still being worked on over on Lafayette Street. I am all about helping people. But I wanna help Jamestown people. I wanna help people here, residents here. We have a decrease in population here. We're gonna put a unit down there, and I'm concerned that it's gonna cause an influx into the city, and we're not gonna be helping just Jamestown people. I wanna help Jamestown people.
So I think we
They come
have a
first.
population here that already needs this project to move forward. We have organizations involved that, if they had the units now, would be able to house those individuals and families. We already have a pipeline and a group of agencies that are working to house people that are here. So I think this is where STEL and Community Helping Hands should address that. I totally agree with you, and I think that they also would agree. We're not advertising outside of the area saying, hey, come to Jamestown, we have this project, right? This is something that our agencies that are already having a really hard time finding housing for people will be a place that they can start being able to place their clients and their guests and the people that they're working with. There is a critical need here already. We don't have to look outside the area. Like Mr. Champ said, because of the funding sources, it has to be available if there is someone that is referred here or, you know, whatever that might be. But there are, I would guess, it will be full on day one with people that are already here. But I would like for STEL and Community Helping Hands to be able to speak to that more directly and answer those specific questions.
I will agree with Mr. Champ that I'm concerned about the added call volumes for police, fire, EMS, with this project. It's going to increase. You know, we're in negotiations with unions now. I would love to see 75, 80 cops again like there was in the 80s and 90s, but that's not gonna happen. I would love to see more firefighters, but that's not gonna happen. And I think it's gonna, this project will put more stress on those departments, more call volume, and more issues down there. And I would love to believe that you're telling me that STEL is not going to advertise or bring people in from Buffalo or other locations. I find that hard to believe. If they have an empty space, they're gonna wanna fill it. I asked that question when they were putting in the women's homeless shelter, is this for Jamestown residents? I'll repeat again, I wanna help Jamestown residents. We don't need to build subsidized housing and cause more issues in our neighborhoods from people coming within, or coming outside in. We're seeing that at the hospital with mental health evaluations, where people that are struggling with mental illness are being brought in from outside areas by law enforcement from other departments, because our hospital is the only place that does 941s and 945 evaluations. We've seen where these individuals get brought in, they get evaluated, and they are released a couple hours later, possibly, and now they're our new Jamestown resident. So I do have concerns going forward with this project.
So can I address the call volume?
Sure.
Because I think, and I obviously cannot speak for the police department or the fire department. But I don't know that call volume will necessarily change. There might be call volume at this particular place, because when you have behavioral health and you have, it's everywhere. But right now, and I can tell you from a code enforcement perspective, we're chasing people all over the city. We can't keep up. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in neighborhoods, it's in empty houses, it's in condemned houses that are completely unsafe. This is an opportunity to provide housing and address the root causes of a lot of the societal issues that we're facing, and in a place where they're receiving supportive care, which I think is a lot of the cause of what we're seeing throughout the entire city. I can't predict how it will impact call volume, obviously, but we're running around chasing our tails right now. I don't know that not doing it will take any steps toward addressing the issues that we have. But again, I would like STEL and Community Helping Hands, they're the experts. This is what they do. So we'll certainly have the opportunity to talk with them.
have a question on resolution number 1, maybe Crystal, you could answer the question. Land Bank wants to give back $270,000 of ARPA fund. What kind of activities fall under the strategic acquisition category?
There's a letter attached, and that outlines very specifically what they want to do with that.
They or us?
They, the land bank,
They want to give it back.
No,
No,
it's
no.
more of a reassignment.
it's reassign it.
Okay, so
Yep.
we're gonna,
So they've already been allocated the funding. They are finding it to be challenging to use it for what they had originally intended. We have an opportunity to make some strategic investment in acquiring some properties in some of the targeted areas and neighborhoods. And they feel that it could be better used to make those acquisitions and basically stop the cycle of disinvestment in those particular properties and get them in responsible homeowner hands.
after we own them, could we tear them down?
If that's the appropriate intervention.
Yeah, okay. And then one of the back to the gateway laws, one of the STEL principles mentioned that the county IDA's getting EPA money for remediation. Is it gonna be enough?
There's a combination, and I think it would be better for them to explain all of the dollar amounts in
Okay.
each of their, I guess, buckets of funding and how that's going to be spent, but, you know, remediation anywhere for anything is significant.
Right.
You know, as we know, the Crawford cleanup that was ultimately funded through the EPA was well over $5 million, just to clean up a building that was destroyed by fire and remediate that site enough to be, you know, no longer a public health hazard, so,
Wasn't the original program roughly $35 million, and now we're talking about doubling that? Is that correct?
yep, and that is on, totally on par with the way costs have gone up since the pandemic, across the board everywhere. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not out of the realm of what the reality is right now.
In 7 years. Since the origin.
We've seen this with every project that we have. Construction costs, labor costs, everything.
Okay, we good? Move on to public safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had one gentleman, Richard Harrington, speak from Barrett and Stearns. He lives up in that neighborhood. He voiced some concerns about with the change in the weather, and then also last year with individuals riding unlicensed motor vehicles on public highways consisting of mini bikes, homemade bikes with motors put on them, basically illegal activity up in the neighborhood of people riding around. He's concerned about public safety, vehicles, motor vehicles running into these individuals on these unauthorized bikes. Said it generally happens in the late afternoon into the evening, and he just would like to see more enforcement up in that area. We did speak to Deputy Chief Forrester about it. I asked him to take a zero tolerance approach in the summer. If officers are in the area or anywhere in the city and see John Deere lawnmowers being used as modes of transportation, mini bikes, bikes with motors mounted on them, that if they're not in an in-progress call and they're not busy, please stop that individual, cite that individual, and tow the motor vehicle that they're using, because it's a real hazard on our roadway. We did also have Mr. Champ speak briefly. He had brought up about some Facebook posts that are being put out by the Kennel Club Union, asked for a response from Public Safety Committee on those posts, and Councilman Reynolds did speak. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I just pointed out the fact that when Chief Jackson reported the fiscal year or the calendar year results of his department, that it wasn't a wholesale increase of crime, other than homicides and maybe one or two violent categories. The rest of it was maintaining itself, so to speak. And I felt very strongly that it's a safe city. We're all subject to being a victim at some point in time, no matter what city you live in or what neighborhood you live in. And I think, you know, again, me personally, my glass is still half full when it comes to this town or this city. And we need to beef up and support our police department and fire departments and EMS folks that provide the services they do. It's second to none. And if we allow the negative connotation that, you know, we're living in the Bowery of New York City and you can't cross the street without fear, then, you know, we've got a bigger problem than crime. We've got a philosophical issue that people they're not going to put up with it. So we have to be positive about what we do in this city and why we do it. And I'm very I'm disappointed that it comes across as being a dangerous city compared to Chicago, Detroit, New York, LA, Buffalo. You know, it's language, and I don't care for it.
I will add that some of the crimes that have been listed are targeted events. They're not just random acts against our citizens of Jamestown. It's, you know, drug dealer on drug dealer, and these are very specific targeted events. So as far as that goes, Chief Coon did, Chief, you want to just brief us on some of the stuff you gave us?
Oh, certainly.
As far as firefighter Roush, well, the battalion chief, correct, I'm sorry.
So recently we had one battalion chief that completed the Fire Officer 3 training program. Of the 2 that were selected to go, 1 did complete successfully. Station number 5 is coming along nicely. We should have it open in a couple more weeks. We're looking to have it professionally cleaned, and then we're gonna move the crew back in there. The renovations have gone fantastic. We'll certainly be communicating with council members if you guys wish to come over. Take a look at the station. They've really done a fantastic job with all the renovation work over there, and I'm very proud to be able to report to you that we're very close to getting it. We're looking probably a little bit farther down towards summer. I don't want to steal the Morton Club's thunder, but the Richfield oil fire that occurred back in the 1930s, the firefighters that perished at that event were stationed at Station 5. So we're doing maybe a memorial service even this year. That'll be in June. A little bit about the second ambulance. It's going very smoothly. I have talked with our neighboring fire districts that's around the city. I haven't made it to all of them yet, but the feedback I'm getting back from those departments is positive. That second ambulance has certainly stemmed the flow of calls that are going to those agencies to mutual aid, which is totally what that was intended to do. We will be talking going forward about the EMS revenue that's coming in. I know we haven't had a second ambulance in service for an entire year yet. But as we keep moving forward with that, I think that data will fill in, and then you'll have a pretty good idea come budget season as to where we're gonna land as far as that revenue goes. Any questions I can answer, council?
Thank you, Chief. And then we had 2 resolutions, both of them appeared on the finance agenda as well. The first one was to send Detective Damon to the Advanced Forensic Techniques Crime Scene Investigations to be held in Glencoe, Georgia from April 6th to April 19th, 2025, with transportation, lodging, and meal expenses paid by Chautauqua County District Attorney's Office, DCJS Give Grant, and that passed. The second one also was for the amount of the $19,483.92 is to authorize purchase of the Axon Investigate for a term of 36 months with previously approved Give Grant funds, and that's for the software for the body camera footage. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, for video that we obtain from surveillance and wherever else that we can do.
Okay. And that passed, and that's all we had.
Yes, Councilman Russell, the the gentleman that spoke, was he talking about motor vehicles like mini bikes or like the four-wheelers? It sounds like.
All of the above.
Okay, I just didn't know if he meant e-bike.
No, I mean, he didn't mention e-bikes, it was more like, the mini bikes, the John Deere tractors, some people need to understand this, there's people that lose their driver's license for driving while intoxicated. And their mindset is okay, I can't drive a car, but I can get on my mini bike and drive around.
Or a golf
That-
cart, yeah.
Yeah, that's still, you could still be ticketed for that, that's,
Mhm.
so.
Okay, yeah, thank you for.
Randy, did you have anything for,
No, Mr. President, we did not have any resolutions in Public Works today.
anything just?
No, nothing of substantiated.
Randy, I've enjoyed the Second Street, has DOD Mark put up signs, rough road, potholes, stay slow, I mean, I think signage was supposed to be part of.
They have not. We do have some rough road ahead signs that we could put up, if that's requested. We can look at where to put those.
I haven't been on, I've been on
Jamestown
Faulkner.
High School to Faulkner line. We don't have that many.
That's just it, where on the road would you suggest they go, the beginning, the middle, the end? I mean, I don't know where the best spot to put those is either.
The westbound lane coming out of Faulkner is probably the worst.
Yeah.
I travel it, I used to travel it every day.
Eastbound's not that bad, but westbound is terrible.
Eastbound's worse than westbound.
You think so, going towards Faulkner?
No,
Yeah, coming
correct.
from Faulkner to
You're correct,
Jamestown.
yeah. Westbound is worse. Yeah.
How about down east, the middle, and then?
Eastbound is good. The city schools patch that.
Yeah.
All right,
And the DOT is still assisting the Jamestown with the patching, currently. And with this good weather, they're gonna see if they can get some more cold patch to at least help the worst holes.
I've seen a lot of complaints about the patch job, but I feel like it's kinda like you're in a pirate ship and it gets blasted by 9 cannonballs, we're mailing it with a bucket at this point.
Yeah.
So, doing the best we can.
Newland Avenue's getting bad too.
okay. You have anything for us?
I do not. Nothing at all. I do have one announcement for one thing, that this, just a reminder that this Saturday is Turn the River Green from 10 to 12. Starts at 10, river turns at 11. It's supposed to be great weather for the first time in a few years, so get down there and celebrate. Yes.
In the morning, it might rain in there.
Just a reminder too that there's no meeting next week,
Correct.
so you can enjoy St. Patrick's Night. Have your green beverages and your corned beef and cabbage. And our next meeting, our next work session will be the 24th, and then the voting session will be the 31st, because we have 5 Mondays in the month of March. Anything else? If not, we adjourn.